Hey everyone, welcome to The Loop, a podcast by Mosaic Church. In today's episode, we are going to be discussing our new series that we're kicking off this week that we are calling Chasing the Rabbit. As always, I'm joined by our senior pastor, Brandon Connor, and we're also glad to have you here for the conversation.
You're listening to The Loop, a podcast by Mosaic Church. The goal? To know Jesus a little better so we can live like him a little more. And now, here's today's host, Wes Feldner.
All right, welcome back to The Loop. My name is Wes, and I'm the creative arts pastor here at Mosaic, and I've actually been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time. Brandon, we've been studying the book of 1 Thessalonians since January, and first off, let me say, it has been awesome.
Yeah.
We were able to get away from the office a little bit and do some praying and some seeking, and we got a new book for us to study, huh?
Yeah, we're finishing up 1 Thessalonians this weekend, and then that means the next weekend we're kicking off a brand new book study in the book of Ecclesiastes.
Ecclesiastes.
And so I'm really excited about this one. If you're not familiar with this book, it's in the Old Testament, and it's actually part of what Bible scholars would call the wisdom literature section.
Great.
And so it's packed full of wisdom that I think all of us need in our lives.
That's awesome. Headed back to the Old Testament. I'm excited, man.
Yeah,
I'm
we've
excited.
only, since I've been here for almost 5 years, and I think we've only done one book out of the Old Testament. We studied the book of Proverbs for a while, and a lot of people loved that study. And so we're jumping back into something similar. But a little bit different in a lot of ways. And we're going to be studying the book of Ecclesiastes. It's a 12-chapter book, and going to be knocking that out together.
That's great. So we're going to be spending a lot of time in the book of Ecclesiastes. It's going to be great. Headed back into the wisdom literature. Do us a favor and give us a quick overview of the book of Ecclesiastes, maybe some of the major themes or even some of the series that we're going to experience as part of this study of that book.
Yeah, we'll be in the whole book for about 5 months, which will take us right up to around the holiday season, and then we'll be wrapping it up in time for Thanksgiving and Christmas and do all the traditional, holiday series then. But while we're in this study, we're going to be doing a number of things. If you look at the book of Ecclesiastes, what you see is he focuses on 4 or 5 different themes that people really struggle with.
Yeah.
He talks about how people are kind of chasing after things in life. And in some ways, he kind of uses his life as an opportunity to say, hey, are these things really worth chasing after? And then he writes about his experience. So he talks about chasing after work. You got all those people who are chasing after their career and climbing the corporate ladder and trying to be successful. He talks about chasing after the almighty dollar. People who are trying to accumulate massive amounts of wealth. That young, aggressive guy who's going, man, I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30.
Yeah.
And, they've got all this stuff that they want to buy. So he talks about that experience as a man who experienced all kinds of wealth, accumulated a lot of it. He talks about what that was like for him. He talks about chasing after wisdom. Okay. There's a lot of people who, they love to read, they love to go to school, they want to earn another degree. And so all of life for them is about chasing knowledge. And so he talks about that experience. He also, though, talks about chasing after pleasure. And I think, man, that's where so many of us live. Here on the Gulf Coast, people like to have fun.
It's true.
And there are a lot of ways to do it where we live. And so I think it's going to be just such a relevant book study because it speaks to the things that we find ourselves chasing after in this world. And so I think it's going to be really good. I'm super excited about it.
Sounds good already.
Yeah.
All right, so this study of the book of Ecclesiastes is going to take us all the way up to the holiday season, really. So let's camp out for a second on the first series that we are going to be hitting as we dive into this book study. You're calling it Chasing the Rabbit. So talk to us a little bit about this, because this is really just a setup for the greater study of the book of Ecclesiastes. Where does this title come from, and what does it mean?
Great question. One of the things that you'll read over and over again as you study this book is this phrase. He says it was like chasing after the wind. And so as he chased after pleasure, as he chased after money, as he chased after a career, as he chased after more knowledge, his experience was like, man, it felt like I was just chasing after the wind, like it was chasing after something that I could never really get my hands on.
Yeah.
And so as I kind of thought about, well, how do you contextualize that? Sometimes you hear people talk about chasing the carrot.
Yep.
You know, it's like there's a
dangling
carrot being dangled out in front of you, and like you're always kind of chasing after the carrot. But then I thought, you know what? Like, we live in Ocean Springs. There's an even better analogy here because our school mascot is
the Greyhound.
The Greyhounds, that's right. And so what we do is we look at a Greyhound, and if you go to a track, not that I've ever been to one, but if you were to go to a track, you could see these dog races, and they line up these Greyhounds, and what do? They chase after a rabbit that they can never catch. And so in some ways, I think that's the human experience, and I think it's a great way for us to just start the process of thinking about chasing after things in life that we can really never catch or get our hands on in a way that produces a sense of fulfillment and a sense of satisfaction, or maybe even a sense of purpose.
Wow.
Yeah, super excited about it. And
it's going to be good.
It is, and there's going to be all kinds of fun things that we're able to do with that series title, and it's going to be so relevant. And if you have a Greyhound, I would love to meet you. I may like let the dog come to church for the whole series and just kind of have a mascot here at Mosaic for about a month. That'd be fun.
That'd be great. Well, it sounds like an awesome series and something that honestly we all need to hear. It's something that we all need to hear. So before we move on, let me remind everyone that this is just a glimpse of what we're going to be diving into in our study of the book of Ecclesiastes. Remember that services are Thursdays at 7 p.m. and Sundays at 9:30 and 11 right here at the church. And obviously, if you can't make it for any reason, you can always stream our services live on our website, mosaicgc.com, or on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Also, if you're not already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button there for more episodes like this, as well as daily content delivered straight to your device. And finally, you can search for Mosaic Church across all social media platforms and be part of our online community and help us keep the conversation going. All right, so Brandon, I want to dig into this just a little bit better. So we've heard you talk a little bit about the book of Ecclesiastes as a whole. We've heard you talk just a little bit about our series, Chasing the Rabbit, but let's talk about why this series might be important for our listeners to be a part of. So let's start with our regular church attenders, the people that would call Mosaic Church their home. These are folks that are, they're already Christians. They're already part of our church family. Why is it important for them to be part of a series or to hear the stuff that we're going to hear as part of this Chasing the Rabbit series specifically?
Yeah, in a big way, it's tied to our vision here at Mosaic Church. And so one of the things that happened was this thing called COVID in 2020.
Yeah.
I've always talked about how we had big plans for 2020. We were actually going to start a new location, and COVID kind of brought the entire world to a screeching halt.
Right.
And so we just adjust ourselves to the winds of the Spirit. And so when things like that happen, like we don't go kicking doors open. We don't force something to happen and make foolish decisions, and we're just not going to do that. So we kind of put everything on hold.
Right.
We want to be healthy as a church, and then we want our influence to grow as a church. And so now that we're kind of getting out of COVID and we're getting healthy as a church again, and people are coming back and in a strong position financially, we're looking at opening another campus in Gulfport in the early part of 2022.
Right.
A lot of that work is already underway. But in order for us to do that work, and in order for us to do it very, very well, the people of Mosaic Church need to take some time, and we all need to think through our priorities. So when Jesus is on the earth with his disciples, he is calling them to be the people who actually start the early church.
Right.
But before they could ever start the church, Jesus had to change their priorities. And so the disciples are people who are following Jesus, and you can see that their priorities are not the same as his priorities.
Yeah.
At times they wanted wealth. Jesus was willing to embrace poverty. At times they wanted fame. Jesus was willing to say things that would literally make thousands of people walk away from a relationship with him. He was going to tell tough truths at times rather than tickling people's ears or telling them what they wanted to hear. You see that the disciples at times, man, they wanted to live a long, happy life. Jesus was willing to embrace death at a very early age. And I think that when Jesus was spending time with them, he knew you are never going to be committed to building the church and developing spiritual influence in the world until your priorities change.
It's great.
And so all of us as followers of Jesus, I think we start following Jesus because of the benefits.
Sure.
But we don't always think about following Jesus in terms of what is it going to require of me or what's the responsibility that I have. And yet we all know we have a responsibility to carry on the mission that Jesus has given his church and his people. But in order for us to do that, our priorities need to change. And in some ways, this book is a book that is going to help us rethink why we're chasing after the things that we're chasing after.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will produce in us a willingness and clarity in terms of why our priorities should be in alignment with Jesus rather than maybe in line with our culture.
Yeah.
So big implications for our church and for really living a life of purpose as individuals on this earth.
That's great. I love that word alignment. And I think it's, like you said, it's going to be a great setup and a great push as we move towards that campus launch. If we can align our priorities with God when we hit that new community, it's going to be great.
Great things are going to happen.
It's going to be awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about a different group of people.
Yeah.
So we talked about folks that are connected with our church family, our regular attenders. But what about people that aren't connected to our church yet, or maybe people that are outside of the Christian faith? Why would a series like Chasing the Rabbit be a good one for them to check out or a good one for them to be a part of?
Yeah. One of the things I love about the Bible is it addresses the age-old questions that people have always had. It doesn't matter when you were born. It doesn't matter where you were born. If you have lived somewhere on the blue planet, then you have wrestled with a certain set of questions that are kind of fundamental to being human. And so one of those questions is the question, what is the meaning of life?
Yeah.
There's a lot of books that have been written on this, and it's interesting because you see that these books are always bestsellers because they're attempting to answer the question that people have always struggled with. People are longing for purpose. So Rick Warren comes along and he writes a book called The Purpose-Driven Life, and it sells over 30 million copies.
Right.
Why? Because people are looking for real meaning and purpose in their life. Viktor Frankl, who is a Jewish man, he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, and that book was wildly popular because, again, people are really looking for what is the meaning or the purpose of my life. Like, do I just exist here for 70, 80, 90 years and it's over and I just go back into the dust and that's it? Or is there real meaning and purpose that I can experience during my time on this earth?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those questions that people wrestle with. And I would just say, even if you're not a Christian, even if you don't believe in God, I believe with all my heart that it would be well worth your time to come and to sit under the teaching, not of me, but the teaching of Solomon, who was the wisest man who ever lived.
Yep.
I mean, historically, we know people from all over the world made great effort to come and to sit with him and talk about these kinds of questions so that they could learn and then go back and live a better life.
Right.
And so even if you're not a follower of Jesus, like, take a few months out of your life and ask the greater question, like, what is the meaning of my life? And explore this question with us, and maybe you'll discover some things that will radically change your perspective on the life that you live on the earth and the 70, 80, or 90 years that you have.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the studies that we do, we can see why it would be important for a church person to hear that content. But I love what you're saying here. So it sounds like this is the kind of series that I want to invite, my family, my friends, my coworkers, my neighbors to attend, right?
Absolutely. They are wrestling with this question, whether they're talking to you about it or not,
right?
Or whether they're really thinking about it at a conscious level or not. Like, everyone wants their life to have real meaning and real purpose. And so invite them, like, just let them know what we're talking about here at Mosaic for the next few months.
Yeah.
It's going to be it's going to be creative, and it's going to be a very relevant set of messages that we're going to be focusing on for really about 5 months together. So invite your friends, whether they're followers of Jesus or not.
That's great. Man, Awesome. And you've heard it right here, folks, is you're not going to want to miss this series, Chasing the Rabbit. And more importantly, don't come alone. Bring your family members, your coworkers, your neighbors. Ask them to come and sit with you at church this week as we get into our new series, Chasing the Rabbit. It's going to be great for us. It's going to be great for them as well. And there's going to be a lot of stuff, I'm sure, that each and every one of us can glean from these messages. So remember, this is just a taste of what we're going to dive into as we study the book of Ecclesiastes. So Brandon, any final thoughts, any resources and stuff that you would recommend as we get ready and prepare ourselves for this new study, Chasing the Rabbit?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. Number one, I would say come if you're young. I watch so many people wrestle with this question for years in their life. They hit a midlife crisis. They feel like they missed it, trying to recapture their youth. I watch people who are much older who never really thought about this question at a deep level, and so they feel like they wasted their whole life. And so there's a big part of me that cares so much about the next generation, about people right now who are in their 20s and their 30s, and I so want them to get this so that they don't go through life like so many people do, feeling like it was a life that was wasted. John Piper wrote a book called Don't Waste Your Life, and it was written to young people. And so I think this is going to be a book study that I really want the younger generation to come to, and I think it's going to benefit them for many, 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 many years. Second thing I would say is read the book of Ecclesiastes. It's not going to take you a tremendous amount of time. If you read for just 10 to 20 minutes a day, you can probably knock out the entire book in less than a week. And so I would just say start reading through the book of Ecclesiastes. It's a very interesting book. If you don't have the right perspective, it can feel a little depressing. But we're going to shed some light on that so that it's not a depressing book, but it's actually a book that just gives great clarity and great wisdom as we try to look at this book in the context of the whole counsel of Scripture and how do we make sense of it in a way that really makes our lives better. So read that book, and there's going to be other resources that we'll be dropping throughout the series. You've already heard me talk about like Viktor Frankl's book or Rick Warren's book and some others. And so you can check those books out if you want, but I would say at least start by reading through the book of Ecclesiastes.
Awesome. So we've all got our homework. Come prepared this week. Remember, Chasing the Rabbit starts this weekend. We will see you Thursday at 7 p.m. or Sunday at 9:30 and 11. And remember, bring somebody with you. Well, thanks so much for carving some time out of your day to spend with us. If this episode was helpful to you, or you already know who you're going to be inviting to church with you this week, share this episode with them so they can check it out as well. We love you and appreciate you, our listeners. We'll see you this week as we kick off our study in the book of Ecclesiastes, Chasing the Rabbit. We'll see you guys.
You've been listening to The Loop, a podcast by Mosaic Church. For more information, visit us online at mosaicgc.com.